Auburn at Texas A&M. A&M by 4.5. That's what the Aggies are favored by, about 4.5, depending on where you look. It's the Saturday game. It's 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 local time there. It's on CBS. We will be on the sidelines. This is where the Late Kick Renaissance Tour is taking us this week. Again, as I said Sunday, to right a great injustice, a grave wrongdoing on our part earlier this year, where I was at OU, Texas, had credentials to go to Bama, A&M, and instead I flew home and I watched that field get stormed at 38,000 feet. That was on me. Never again. And so we are going to Kyle Field. And I didn't know that we were going to get the opportunity, but we are going there. May even be there for Midnight Yell Friday night. Obviously, I've never experienced that. I've been to A&M before, but I've never experienced that. You know, a lot of people say the college football season goes by so fast. Well, no, it doesn't. I want you to go ask Brian Harsin or Jimbo Fisher how fast the season has gone by. I want you to think. For those of you who think this season has flown by, do you remember when Auburn got beat by Penn State and then almost lost to Georgia State? Do you remember when A&M got beat by Arkansas? Because it feels like about 2 years ago. It feels like these teams have already been playing for about 2 years. So much has happened, and we still got a month to go. So much has happened, but I want you to understand the reason we have this game circled and prioritized. Number one, because according to your precious playoff rankings, these are 2 top 15 teams, and I agree with that. The JP poll agrees with that. There are huge SEC implications on this. Both of these teams are still alive. Auburn flat out controls their own destiny. A&M needs like one thing to happen, but both of these teams can still make it to Atlanta. Now, this game may knock one of them out, but that's why you need to tune in. Because Alabama, I mean, what we know about the Tide, they still got to go to Auburn at the end of the year, and they've lost the last 2 times they've gone down there, and I've been on hand both times. And I was there the time before where they won and Henry won the Heisman. Even then it wasn't easy. It's never easy for them there. So keep that in mind. I have reason to believe that as great as Kyle Field is as a home field advantage, I think it will affect Auburn as little as any team A&M plays at home this year. Here's the reason. They are so battle-tested. Auburn is so incredibly battle-tested. They've already gone to Penn State, they've already gone to LSU, and they've already gone to Arkansas. I mean, Kyle Field, listen, I think it's one of the 3 or 4 best home field advantages in college football. I'm not on the 4-letter network side of things where I say you've never had an impact on games. I've been there. I know exactly how tough it is and how crazy it is. You get so much motion sickness on the field, by the way. When they start swaying side to side and you look up, don't look up. That's what I would advise you to do. If you're standing on the field, you just need to pull this. When that swaying starts, you just need to go like this. Because you look up, you get motion sickness. It's crazy. Having said that, I don't know that Auburn's going to be shook to the point where they get rattled just because of Kyle Field. That doesn't mean anything more than A&M's just got to outplay Auburn. That's all that means. But I'm just telling you, if you expect Auburn to fold because that place is going to be really loud Saturday, I think it's going to take a little bit more than that. They've already dealt with 2 or 3 fastballs of 100,000 plus. So this one, I don't think will knock them off quite to the degree that maybe it did against Alabama even. This game, though, I think we'll end up feeling a lot like you thought Michigan State would. A lot of you, including me, thought that was going to be a game played in the upper teens, low 20s, not degree, but points. And then, whoever got to 24, 25, 26, whoever got in that realm first, that was going to be the winner. Well, we ended up with 37-33. This game right here, I think, is a low to mid-20s game. And so with A&M, I think it's 2 totally different games depending on how this starts. If the Aggies can get this thing settled into a groove and we start feeling like we're on pace for a 1st to 24 type game, that spells a lot of opportunity for Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M, especially at tight end, will be featured prominently with Weidermeyer. I always mispronounce Jalen's name. So J-Dub, I think he will be featured very prominently. Tight ends given Auburn defensively an issue, a time or 10 as of late. Not to mention he's a big facet of their offense anyway. But that, and if they settle in, they start getting that run game going early on, and they're clipping off a minimum of, let's say, 4.75 to 5 yards per carry, that's going to spell a lot of success for A&M. However, if it gets really loose early, which Auburn has the ability to do, and Bo Nix escapes the pocket a couple of times and they pop A&M early and they got, let's say, a 10-0 lead before you've even settled in, if they do to the Aggies what Michigan did to Michigan State last week, then all of a sudden you're looking at a game that could quickly turn into a different style fight than A&M really wants. And all of a sudden you're talking about a game that could get into the 30s, which I don't expect, nor do you expect. But then again, what did we expect last week versus what we got? So Bo Nix, for several reasons, I think ends up being the key facet here. The Auburn ground game is how they plan on winning. That's how they plan on being there in the fourth quarter. But you know good and well, if you watched Auburn last week and you've watched them as of late, Bo Nix, his passing numbers are through the roof relative to what they were. His yards per pass, last two games, double digits versus what they were early in the year. They were abysmal, but you need some more context on that. If you've watched Auburn, you know this is not a traditional 3, 5, 7-step drop and let's go through our route progression and boom, 15-yard out, 20-yard slant over the middle. That's not what's happening. What's happening is they're winning the best way they know how right now, and that is changing the launch point, or they're moving the pocket, or plays are breaking down, and that's where Auburn's receivers are the best. They're not necessarily all world. In fact, it's a subpar receiver room when it comes to how you draw a play up on a grease board. They're just not overly special athletically. But when plays break down, there is no receiver room in America more adept at making things happen when that pocket changes and moves and when plays break down than Auburn. And that's what A&M's working on all week. It's a lot easier said than done, just the whole keep Bo in the pocket thing. But those popcorn droppers, a phrase that we coined last week, those, along with a healthy dose of this Auburn ground game, which Bo Nix will also participate in, that'll be the key. The biggest roadblock that I have in figuring this thing out, and I'm about to show you what the model thinks, the biggest roadblock I have is interpreting last week against Ole Miss. Our buddies over at College Football Nerds, they did a really good job pointing this out both in a video and on Twitter. And we telegraphed this. It's why we picked Auburn last week. The dynamics that were in play. How badly Ole Miss was beat up coming in. And how rested Auburn was, and they had the home field advantage. It was a purely dynamics-based pick last week. And that's why we took Auburn as our best bet. But even within the game, Ole Miss got beat up. To the point where, they were beat to death at the end of that game. And they were without so many of their key playmakers. Now that doesn't mean anything more than Auburn won a football game, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles for you. How much are we now basing our opinion of Auburn off a game that had a lot of dynamics-based outcome to it, in my opinion? And do you have maybe a falser sense of confidence than you should about Auburn going into A&M? Because if I were to be the devil on one shoulder saying that, the angel could show up on the other side and say, okay, but Auburn's playing their best football right now. Would you agree? And everyone would have to shake their head, yeah. And then I'd say, and Zach Calzada and that A&M offense, they are not built to pull away. Even though A&M does have an athletic advantage over Auburn, and it's not really even disputable amongst Auburn fans, I don't know that A&M's built to fully take advantage of that right now. They have not been lighting teams up through the air. They've run the ball okay. But Auburn can get a decent amount of pushback against the run, especially if they sell out to it on certain downs. And if they can, now we can go to what the model thinks, Jesse, by the way, if we want to. The line on this thing being 4, our model agrees with it completely. Like, we are right on. We're at 4, 4.5. We're right in line with what Vegas thinks. Initially, I thought this was going to be a slam dunk, that I was going to end up taking Texas A&M and I was going to lay the points. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is a one-possession either way kind of deal. I don't like A&M's ability to just pull away and just flex athletically on Auburn. And I think that Auburn team, that's a really tough snake to cut the head off of right now. So I think it's going to be a battle either way. I ended up going the other way. I ended up going Auburn plus the points. If anything, I would ever so slightly lean A&M to win the game. And I don't want to gloss over the result here in lieu of just the point spread, because the result is everything. I would very slightly lean Texas A&M because I think the athletic test on the road instead of a beat-up team at home, I think that does mean a little bit here. But, boy, I think it's close. I think it's going to be a really good, really hard-fought competitive game. Would not be surprised either way. I'll take A&M to win slightly. Anything over a field goal, I would take Auburn and the points. It's not an official play. We are not betting on that.